name is Audra Winter. I am the creator of the World of Guardian. I'm the author of a young adult fantasy series based around the zodiac signs. It's called The Age of Scorpius. It's on Kickstarter. I literally have 21 days to finish funding it on Kickstarter. If you want to help, I do have a donation link up on my website. Age of Scorpius is the first book to this much larger series that I have been working on since I was 12 years old, that I have worked in for 10 years of my life now. I think it's important to see both the good and the bad of talent.
It is not your responsibility to tell me how I feel about my project and how I emotionally react to it, because this does mean the world to me. And part of the reason that I am getting this recognition is because it genuinely does mean the world to me, because I have dedicated this long to one thing. Have you?
My name is Audra Winter, and I am going to be redoing this book. How one person, one video can impact someone.
Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Meredith. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be discussing Audra Winter. If you exist pretty much anywhere in the book space online, you have probably seen this situation at this point. I'm a little bit behind, and that's because I originally wasn't planning on making a video about this situation. When I first saw it go down, what I thought was happening was that there had been an indie author on TikTok who had generated a lot of hype for their debut, and that debut hadn't gotten the best reviews. When that was my understanding of the situation, my perspective on it was, this isn't really drama. It's unfortunate, of course, and I felt really bad for her. I thought, man, that's gotta suck, right? And I thought of it as a testament to the fact that it's not always the best situation to be in to go viral right away, because if she had released that book to less eyes, she probably would have gotten the same feedback on the book, but way less people would have been delivering it to her, and she could have had time to learn from the feedback of it instead of having a bigger audience when that happened. However, as the week has gone on and more information has come out about this, I was starting to get the impression that it went a little bit beyond just that people weren't thrilled with the final result of the book and that they thought that it needed a little bit of work. At that point in time, I really saw two camps. I saw some people insisting that she was a scammer, but a much larger population of people insisting that she was just a new author and people were overreacting and it's a rite of passage as an author to have a failed release. She was going to come back stronger from this and it was all going to be fine. At that point in time, I didn't really feel like my opinion lied in either of these camps. I don't think that everything in this situation can be explained as simply as she's very young. And I also think that when people say somebody's young and that they're going to grow out of something or learn from something, they do have to learn what that lesson is in order for that to happen. And especially seeing some of her responses, I was concerned that she wasn't learning the lesson that she needed to learn in order to be successful with her next release. And that was when I decided to make a video on it. I dove super deep into it. I watched all of her TikToks, put together a timeline, put together a script. I ordered the book myself. And then this morning, as of me filming this, she dropped another response. I just don't know what to say. Obviously, I will explain more in depth what I mean by that when we get to that point in the timeline. But what I'll just say right now is I want you guys to understand, I tried so hard for this not to be the result of the video, but I'm sorry, her most recent video on this, as of me making this video, is rife with inconsistencies against things that she herself has said. I cannot speak to how she feels. I cannot speak to the emotions that she is sharing in this video. I am sure they are very real, but I can speak to what she's saying in this video are facts in comparison to my understanding of what the facts are based off of other videos that she has made and other evidence that I have found in other locations. And in my opinion, many of the facts in this video that she has stated are at the very least misleading, if not actively untrue to her knowledge. And I'm not really seeing anybody talk about that because I don't know if anybody has gone through all of her TikToks the way that I have and seen basically everything she said on the platform up to this point. And I don't even say that to toot my own horn. I don't say any of this to toot my own horn. I say this to tell you I did not want this to be the video. I did not want to be the one making the video saying she's lying. But I'm sorry, that is my understanding of this situation at this point in time. I cannot even begin to describe the emotions I felt watching that video. I was gobsmacked, I was bamboozled, and again, 90% of it is stuff that contradicts stuff she has shared. So she was either lying before or she's lying now. We are going to talk about the book as I go through all of this, but to me, this situation is so much more about her and the way she's approached this release and the way she has reacted to the reaction from the release, and where I do not have the luxury anymore of giving her the benefit of the doubt. So with that, we're going to dive into the video. But for those of you who are subscribed, I should probably address the elephant in the room, and that's the room. I built a new set. I'm not done with it yet, but I figured it was ready enough to film a video in. Definitely let me know what you guys think if you have any feedback. I'm not sold on the white shelves. They were given to me by a friend that was going to get rid of them. They're free and I hate waste, but I'll be honest with you guys that I am not really the biggest fan of white bookshelves, and so I'm tempted to paint them, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you like the white? Do you think they'd look better as, like, for example, a dark foresty green? Let me know. But with that, let us dive into what is going on with Miss Audra Winter over on BookTok. I'm going to start with an overview of the timeline of her time on TikTok. The earliest TikTok currently on her page is January 11th, 2021. Up to this morning, it was my understanding that that was the very first video she had ever posted. In her most recent response, she made a comment about having been on BookTok since 2018. That could have been as a viewer and she didn't post a TikTok until 2021, or there are TikToks that she has deleted from prior to 2021. I don't know which it is. All I can tell you is that the earliest TikTok I could find on her page was from January 11th, 2021, and it was of her introducing TikTok to this fantasy world that she had created and was writing a book in. And over the course of 2021, she posted a lot about her book, her world, trying to find a literary agent. Oh, did I not bring my phone in here? Okay, well, I'm gonna need that, so I'll be right back. Oh. It was in here the whole time. You know what information I sincerely hope they don't give you at the pearly gates is the amount of your short human life you spent looking for your phone. She posted in June about having 70,000 followers, and then eventually posted about having gained 100,000 followers. So we can presume that at the end of 2021, she had about 100,000 TikTok followers. In January of 2022, she posted about signing with a literary agent, and she continued to post throughout that year, both about her world and about the process with her agent. There are a few videos that she has where she says the book is in revision and they're going to be revising it for a few months, and once it's through the revision process, they're going to talk to publishers. Then in October of 2022, she disappears. She stops posting for 2 years and doesn't come back to the platform until November 5th, 2024. Now, there is something very tragic and impactful that happened on that date, and she returned to the platform to express her displeasure at this turn of events, same queen, and shares that she has decided to self-publish the book. Over the course of the next few months, she starts a Kickstarter for people to support her in doing that. This Kickstarter had many, many layers with many rewards to it. She shared that she had been in revision for 3 years at this literary agency, and then she had been dropped by her agent right when she had the manuscript finished. Remember that? That's going to become very important. In the time after this, she posted a lot on the platform about how she felt like she was struggling to reach the audience that she had had years past. And she speculated that maybe it was because she joined the Creator Fund and TikTok was suppressing her views because they didn't want to pay her out. Now, I have seen this theory floating around. I am not a TikToker. I do not have a very large TikTok following at all. Long form content is my jam. Nobody cares about my short form content, and honestly, I don't really either. If I'm going to talk about something, I'm going to talk about it for an hour, and we're all pretty much in agreement on that. So I cannot speak to my own experience with this because I do not qualify for the Creator Fund on TikTok, but what I can tell you is that I have seen people saying this before. She is not the first person that I have seen say that she joined the Creator Fund and then her views dropped off a cliff. So I really could go either way on this, but I will also tell you that, again, having watched all of her TikToks, she was still posting in late 2024, early 2025, videos that were of a style that did a lot better in 2021 when she had originally gone viral. From what I could see, from what I could tell, she didn't branch out a ton from this content style, or if she has, she's since deleted them. And so part of me wonders if some of what she was noticing as to not getting that many views was more correlated to her not really knowing what goes viral now, more so than what went viral back then. Just speculation on my part, I have no idea. For all I know, TikTok is suppressing people's views, but I will say that these videos were peppered in with some other videos that fall under an umbrella that I would call pity marketing. Pity marketing is when people use an underdog story, a bit of like a woe is me energy to attempt to sell something. She is not the first person to do this. She's not going to be the last. I am not a huge fan of this style of marketing. I find that it does not typically work on me, but I do think people have success doing it because, like I said, she's not the only person who has made content in this style. Now, what I don't know is if these videos actually weren't performing and the feelings she was expressing in them were tied to that, or if she was finding that posting in this style made the videos do better. I'm not sure. All I know is that there was an era where she was posting almost exclusively about how much trouble she was having getting her videos to go viral and getting the fact that she was now publishing the book in front of the audience that was originally excited for it. Over the course of her time on TikTok, she has shared that she has written quite a few manuscripts. The exact number has shifted a bunch, so I'm just going to say around 10. But when somebody asked her, if you've written that many manuscripts, how come none of them are available? At some point she says that when she does revisions, what she actually does is starts the manuscript over from front to back and just takes another crack at it.
9 books in this series. We're counting revisions because when I revise, I restart the entire thing.
This information, I think, is actually one of the most important pieces of information that we get from some of her TikToks when we go to look at what happened with the actual book release. Please keep in mind that she herself said in February of this year that when she does revisions, what she does is starts the manuscript over from front to back. So every time she does that, she counts that as a new book, a new manuscript that she has written/completed. So she had this Kickstarter up, but Kickstarters usually have a set amount of time for somebody to raise the money, and she was on a bit of a time crunch to reach her goal. At some point in February, she had somewhere in the 20s of days left on the Kickstarter, and she had raised just over $3,000 with 50 pledges. She then decided to pull the Kickstarter and share that part of why she was doing this is because she wanted it to be a guarantee people got the book instead of an if she hit the goal, and that she wanted to lower the amount of production that she was doing because she really wanted to focus on putting out a good book, and that if she went that route instead of doing the route that had all of this production, then she could publish the book significantly earlier. She said something about sending something out for them to reserve a copy of the book. So I'm assuming from that information that if somebody had pledged to the Kickstarter, that meant that they did get a free book. Free, if you will, like they got a book for what they pledged to the Kickstarter. It just might not include all of the things that were in the Kickstarter. I have not really seen anybody bring this back up. I don't think there's that many people that donated to this Kickstarter that are frustrated with the outcome of it. I think a lot of people were pretty understanding in the moment of what she was saying. And while the average of amount of money per pledge implies that there were people who bought some of the bigger packages, and so we're maybe expecting more of a book box that had a bunch of items in it, most people were just trying to support her and wanted her to publish the book. And generally speaking, I haven't found anybody that's that upset about the fact that she took down this Kickstarter. Also, from a legal perspective, Kickstarters are essentially donations. Kickstarter is very clear on their platform that you are not entitled the item in return for your money. You are donating to the startup of a business, and if that business is successful, then you will get the item that you pledged, but you are not guaranteed that. And there have been cases even of Kickstarters taking the money from the people who donated to them, never delivering the product to them, but starting the business with the money anyway. So just keep that in mind when you're donating on Kickstarter. From a legal perspective, she's fine. She can do whatever she wanted with this money. It's basically a donation. So I think it's safe to assume that she takes the money from this Kickstarter and puts it into starting the process of self-publishing the book without all of the production. You might be wondering, Meredith, if nobody's mad about the Kickstarter, why are you going so in depth about it? Because I think all of this context is really important to understand the backlash she's facing now, even if I'm not seeing people specifically bring up this Kickstarter. Kickstarter, I think it's important to keep in mind that this did happen, and that per her own words, the reason she took down the Kickstarter is because she wanted to focus on the quality of the book instead of the production of it. At some point in this time frame, she begins to shift the narrative surrounding the agent to that she chose to self-publish because she had a bad experience with traditional publishing.
And unfortunately, after I decided to go independent, this app is getting banned.
I do not fault her this. I do not think that this qualifies as a lie, because ultimately she did choose to self-publish. She could have sought out another agent. She could have continued to try to traditionally publish her book. She did not do that, and so I do not really consider this to be a lie as much as I consider it to be spin. She is framing the information in a way that frames her in the most positive light. However, there is a very distinct shift that happens when she lists the pre-order for the book on TikTok Shop. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm not sure how I feel about the allegation that TikTok limits people's views when they join the Creator Fund. However, I do think it makes perfect sense that if you were trying to sell something through TikTok Shop, which TikTok makes money through, that might help push your video to more people. In fact, I think that's why we see creators randomly listing TikTok Shop links on videos that have nothing to do with the product they're talking about, because I would not be surprised if that does improve the views on the video. So when she lists the book for pre-order on TikTok Shop and she starts making videos about this, she starts getting pre-orders. And as she starts to get pre-orders, her videos start to get more and more views, and the content takes a hard shift. Whereas before it was this pity marketing, I'm just a young author trying to make it in this world, this is my dream, please donate to my Kickstarter, yada, yada, yada. Now it's that she's an entrepreneur with a 6-figure business who has been incredibly successful thus far at a young age, saying things about how many followers she had gained quickly, how excited people were about it. She starts to call herself an entrepreneur and starts to talk about running a 6-figure business. She also starts to talk about having a team of 15 to 20 artists.
I have stepped into a role as an entrepreneur and a business owner, which is really, really exciting. It all happened in less than a month, where I just started making 6 figures, and I got to actually hire my team of artists that I've been working with for a few months now. I now have animators on my team.
When genuinely 1 month prior, she had been begging people to donate to her Kickstarter. So people were understandably confused. This is not the first time that people had taken a slight issue with the way Audra presented things in her videos or the way that she framed information. In fact, earlier on her page, there is a video where some of her videos she has started by saying that she has 10 years of experience in writing. Some commenters took issue with this phrasing, saying that if the situation is that she worked on the book from 12 to 22, it's maybe potentially a little bit misleading to say that she has 10 years of experience, because for the most part, when authors say a certain amount of years of experience, they are referencing their publishing time, meaning that from their first published book to now, that amount of time has passed. That is typically what people mean when they say they have 10 years of experience as an author. What Audra means when she says this is that she has 10 years writing. She has been writing as a hobby for 10 years. And to be fair, she did self-publish a book when she was 14, which I think is really impressive. It takes a lot of guts to do that, and she definitely is a risk taker, and she'll go for what she wants, and I do admire that in her. But that publishing wasn't really a success, and she has since unpublished that book and has shared that that was her first attempt at publishing this book that she has recently published. And so I don't know that that counts as professional experience, and I also don't know if that counts as the beginning of the timer to then say the amount of experience she has in the writing industry. I don't know if you can tell from the way I'm talking about this, but I very much agree with this commenter, and especially the fact that the commenter says something to the effect of, I'm not trying to diminish the amount of work that you've put into this, but I think it's misleading to say you have 10 years of experience, because people usually say that to mean professional experience. She went on to make a video talking about Malcolm Gladwell's theory of mastery, 10,000 hours. She says she's worked on the book for 3 hours a day for 10 years and does the math to show that that takes her over the 10,000 hours, which means she is a master.
We're going to take that 10,000 and we're going to divide it by how many days that is. According to that calculation, to achieve 10,000 hours of mastery, according to Malcolm Gladwell's theory, I would have had to write 2 hours and 44 minutes every day. I have surpassed 10,000 hours.
This is a statement that pops up multiple times from this point out. She will talk about having 10 years of experience and her 10,000 hours of mastery of writing in this world specifically. She has spent that amount of time working on this world building and working on this book and this series. I don't know how to say this because it's not that what she's saying isn't true, that the theory is that like 10,000 hours of experience, but it's intentional practice. You can spend 10,000 hours doing something, but if you're not doing it in a way that's helping you improve, then I'm not sure that that's going to put you over that threshold. Not to mention that this is kind of irrelevant to the point that this commenter is making. The point this commenter is making is not that she hasn't spent a lot of time working on the book or working on writing in general. The point that they are making is that when people include an experience number, especially as a way to indicate that you are an expert in something, they usually mean professional experience. I don't think that anything that she says in this video contradicts any point that this commenter is making. And it is the first sign that I can find of her being very defensive to criticism, but that will become a pattern for her. So if we jump back to where we're at, where she's talking about these 15 to 20 artists that she has brought in to her 6-figure business that she is running, she started to have people questioning where she got the money to do this from. The second I saw this, I thought to myself, oh, she's commissioned art from anywhere between 15 and 20 artists. And so it's probably this one-off. She's paid this person for this piece of art that is going into her book or on the cover or something like that. However, some people thought that this meant that she had 15 to 20 salaried employees, and they were somewhat confused as to how she was affording to do that. Now, this could have just been a miscommunication thing, but she goes on to be very defensive towards this and is really sassy about how many pre-orders she sold and how much money she's made off of that and how realistic it is that she does have a team of 15 to 20 artists as a result. Okay, but are they salaried artists? Are you paying their salaries or are they contracted? And that's where I'm saying I don't know if this is a miscommunication or not, if those commenters didn't understand what she was getting at, or if she didn't understand what they were getting at. I feel like a lot of this strife that was happening around this time could have been cleared up by her just saying, yep, I've commissioned art from 15 artists, and I can afford to do that because I've sold a lot of pre-orders. I cannot stress this enough. A one-off commission is a significantly different amount of money we're talking about than paying 15 people's salaries, but it is another example of her being somewhat defensive to criticism. As we get closer and closer to the book release, she posts more and more videos about how many pre-orders she sold, and she starts to talk about potentially having the most pre-orders of an indie author debut ever. Indie author sales are private, and a lot of authors choose not to share exactly how many copies of every book that they have sold. And so while she has sold quite a few books on pre-order, we have no way of knowing if she's actually set the record for most pre-orders because that information isn't public. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said something about how in her most recent response, I thought a lot of the information that she was giving was at the very least misleading, if not intentionally trying to mislead people. There were people following this situation who had been keeping tabs on some of the things that she had said, and they were in the comments sharing what they thought the red flags were. But her reaction to this was one video in which she responded to a lot of the red flags that people were calling out. And in this video, she says, and my agent, which I left voluntarily because I wanted control over my world.
18 to 19 years old, I signed with my literary agency. Back then, my ex-literary agency. I was with them for 3 years. At that time, I had a developmental editor look over it while I was at the agency and my literary agent. I ended up spending 3 years there and rewriting a book 3 times, like entirely different manuscripts. I left on my own will because I decided that I wanted to defend my idea and keep my creative freedom.
Okay, so that's not what we said before. We did not say before that we voluntarily left the agent.
I spent 3 years with a literary agency that had my book in revision. And then at the 3-year mark, when I finally had it done, they dropped me.
And unfortunately, after I decided to go independent, this app is getting banned. I had a really bad experience with traditional publishing, and I decided that I kind of wanted control over my own world that I had put so much effort into anyway.
I left on my own will because I decided that I wanted to defend my idea and keep my creative freedom.
So which is it? Did the agency drop her or did she leave voluntarily? Now, I actually sat and racked my brain to figure out if there is a world in which a chain of events could have happened in which each of these statements could be true in their own right. And I'm going to present to you a possibility that I do not believe. There is one teeny tiny sliver of a possibility. There is a golden path that could make it so these statements are true enough that she could explain this inconsistency away. If she were in a situation in which the agency told her that they would drop her if she didn't make certain changes to her world, and she chose not to make those changes, one could frame that situation as her intentionally leaving, in that she intentionally did not do something that they told her that she had to do in order to avoid being dropped. It's also possible that it was one of those situations where they tried to drop her and she was like, "You can't fire me, I quit." Or just that the relationship was falling apart at the seams and they somewhat mutually decided to split. The reason would be because she didn't want to make changes they wanted her to make. At some point through this process, she has to have lied somewhere. She either left the agency or they dropped her. This brings us finally to the moment where she put the book out. The Age of Scorpius was published on June 27th, 2025, and when the initial reviews started rolling in, from what I can tell, they were not very positive. And I think that's really, 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 really important to keep into the forefront of your mind. Reports were that the book was not up to the quality that people were expecting, but this went beyond writing style or narration. People were saying that this book felt unfinished, that it felt like she published a draft, and that there were typos and editing errors. Oh, I forgot to mention, at one point she talked about having brought in an editor, but she brought in two editors, a developmental editor and a copy editor, in February for a book that she had announced she was releasing in May and actually ended up releasing in June. In my opinion, that's too quick a turnaround time to do a meaningful revision. And for a quick clarification, when authors refer to editors, they typically are referring to a developmental editor. A developmental editor reads the manuscript and gives you general guidance on some things that they think you could work on. They might give you some advice on your plot. They might say a character felt flat, but it's more, they read the manuscript, they give you some general advice on what they think you should do for a revision, and then you make those revisions or you don't. A copy editor is somebody who goes through and tries to catch grammatical mistakes and typos. So they do a lot more of what your high school English teacher does when they're editing your draft, where they might go through your essay and be like, "Oh, that's actually not the proper use of this word, and you need a comma here, and this sentence is a little bit repetitive." Like, that's what a copy editor does. So she claimed to have had both. However, I'll reiterate that she was looking for them in February and she published this book in June. And in my humble opinion, I do not think that that is a long enough turnaround time for her to have gotten any meaningful revision out of working with those editors. In her sassy comeback video to the critics, she talked about how she was working with the Hunger Games editor, and she says this as though it's this gotcha. She says it like it's like, "I'm working with the Hunger Games editor. She chose to work with me. That's how you know my book is good, blah, blah, blah." Now, I was able to find the profile for the editor for this book. I'm not going to share their name. I was able to find their profile, and I was able to find that it says on their profile that they worked on the Hunger Games. That being said, she is a contract editor, which means that you can just hire her. I don't know how selective she is. She might have a ton of requests, but bringing us back to the present. The book was published on June 27th, 2025. I don't know when people actually received their copies. It could have taken 5 to 7 business days in the mail if they were all shipped out on June 27th. You might be wondering why I'm clarifying that. I think that's actually very important context for some of the things we are going to talk about. When the criticism was first coming in, she posted something about the narrative voice saying that her character is neurodivergent, and so she wrote the narrative voice to represent that, and so some people might not like it, but that's just how she likes to do it. And when somebody commented saying, "What a funny way to deflect criticism," she responded pretty defensively, tried to claim that she had no idea what criticism they were talking about, and she might have had 2 or 3 people say to that, but most people were just asking her about narrative voice because they wanted her opinion because they liked the writing. For some reason, filming me didn't feel the need to transition you at all between what she was saying then and what she was about to say. The first thing that Audra posted when the criticism started coming in was that narrative voice video that she's been pretty adamant wasn't a response to criticism. Then, when the backlash kept coming in, she posted this next text response, which is what I'm about to start reading you. She posted, "It was brought to our attention today that the ebook for The Age of Scorpius has many errors that cause its quality to be subpar in comparison to the paperback and hardcover. In my rush to release the ebook, I did not proof with the same attention and care I gave to the physical copies. I am deeply sorry for the disappointment this oversight has caused. We have temporarily removed the ebook from sale and plan to re-release it with all art included, as well as technical improvements and fixes to its content. Since the Kindle preview was the previously available sample, we will be re-uploading a free sample within the next 2 hours as scanned pages of the first chapters from the hardcover. It will be posted publicly on our Patreon for easy access and linked at the top of my link tree. Additionally, we are actively working to update the Amazon and Barnes & Noble standard paperback copies with a higher quality second revised edition. Once released, those who have purchased the first edition will be able to request a code on our website for a free digital copy of the second edition." Okay, there's more to this statement, but I want to pause here because I want to point something out. So the beginning of this statement says, "It was brought to our attention today that the ebook for The Age of Scorpius has many errors." But then later in the statement says, "Additionally, we are actively working to update the Amazon and Barnes & Noble standard paperback copies with a higher quality second revised edition." Why are you updating the paperbacks if the problem was with the ebook? So then this statement continues. "Additionally, I am seeking a second opinion from a third editor on potential editing improvements. Earlier this year, I hired 2 experienced editors to developmentally and copy edit The Age of Scorpius. Their names are in the acknowledgments of the book. Prior to these passes, The Age of Scorpius was in revision with a literary agency, critique groups, beta readers, and various publishing professionals. However, we have heard you. There is always room for improvement. We greatly appreciate the encouragement to seek further feedback to polish the revised second edition and strive to ensure a comfortable reader experience. During this time, I will be taking a small break from posting. My overall health has been deeply impacted and affected by the expectations for me to respond to criticisms and critique less than a month after my first new release. Posting intentionally harmful criticisms on my page directed to me with the demand for me to answer puts me in an uncomfortable position as an author. Though I vastly appreciate all reader feedback and advice, I have in turn received alarming, hurtful, and misconstrued harassment intended to cause harm to me and my team. With increasing safety concerns, it is in my best interest to step away from audience engagement. I cannot say thank you enough for all the support and feedback I've received thus far. I have been showered by unconditional love, kindness, and patience as I learn and adapt my way through a new path in publishing. In just a few months, I've unexpectedly become a new business owner of a creative studio with 20 plus contractors and employees. My aim has always been to uphold and foster a positive community of creatives who love creating and developing Guardian as much as I do. There is nothing more in my life that I care so deeply about than bringing joy to others in the form of storytelling. While operating a collaborative space for many dedicated and passionate artists, I am 22. There is still much for me to learn, but in the meantime, I am doing everything I possibly can to deliver a product that properly reflects the love put into this project on behalf of myself and my team. Thank you for all the feedback. It has vastly helped me understand exactly where I can make improvements to continuously give a voice to independent artists and writers across the world." So this was her first statement on this situation. It's very long, but I wanted to read the whole thing because I think this statement within itself contradicts itself. From the jump, when people were finishing the book, their feedback was that it felt like a draft. They had problems with the plot, they had problems with the narrative voice, they had problems with the dialogue, but most importantly, there were formatting errors and typos and things that made it obvious to people that they did not think it had been edited that much. So in the beginning of the statement and through this whole first page, and I do think that's important, through the whole first page of these slides on TikTok, she is saying that the problem is with the ebook and that the ebook does not match the quality of the physical copies of this book because she rushed to put it all out and that she's sorry for that and that they're going to fix it. However, as you swipe through the statement, you see her saying stuff about also updating the paperbacks. Why would she also be updating the next run of the paperbacks if the problem was with the ebook? Not only that, but why is she seeking another editor if the problem was formatting between a physical copy form and an ebook form? Implies that there are formatting errors that are specific to the ebook because when they were formatting it to be an ebook, it didn't format properly. But if that were the case, why would she be hiring a third editor? If the problems were specifically with formatting on the ebook or even as a stretch, the ebook having the wrong file or something, why would she need a third editor, and why would she be revising the second edition of the paperback? That doesn't make any sense. And also, why would she have such a big rant at the end about her being young and learning things? This statement shows me that she did understand what the criticism was up front. She starts the statement out by saying she's updating the ebook, and that's all that's on the first page of the statement. But as you go through the statement, she is updating the physical copies as well, which implies to me that she was aware that the problem was with the book itself and not with the formatting of it within the ebook. But okay, she said she's gonna update it, and she said that she's gonna take a little bit of a break because it's been hard for her to get this feedback. I also want to call out a specific sentence within this statement. My overall health has been deeply impacted and affected by the expectations for me to respond to criticisms and critique less than a month after my first new release. Remember that she said that, okay? So now we'll move on to statement number 2. This is one page. This coming Monday, August 4th, I'll be making a big announcement. I've been absorbing all the feedback on the Age of Scorpius, and it's become clear I missed the mark. My team and I are cooking up a way to make it right. I'm determined to make this book the best it can be. Until Monday, I'm staying offline. This situation took a huge toll on all aspects of my health, and I've only just begun to recover from the most heartbreak and humility I've ever experienced. Though receiving tough criticism is part of being an artist, I've also encountered hurtful rumors, misinformation, and occasional cruelty coming through both my public and private comments and messages. It got so severe that TikTok stepped in and placed my profile under an anti-bullying protection. I'm aware that Goodreads froze the book's page, but I haven't yet heard from them as to why. I'll update you as soon as I know more. Thank you for your criticism, encouragement, and understanding. All of this has driven me to get back up and do better than ever. See you soon. From what I could tell, people were not thrilled with that first response, but the second response was somewhat placating. The majority of the opinion on TikTok was that she is a young author, this is her debut, some changes need to be made, and she's gonna learn from this and she's gonna come back better, and it's great. There were people who were insisting that the people who pre-ordered should get a refund, and when people responded back to that saying, what? You don't get a refund on a pre-order just because you didn't like the book, the response that a lot of people were saying is that they didn't get the product that they paid for because the book was unfinished. We kept coming back to this. It's a draft. It's unfinished. She didn't edit it, whatever. Most of the Goodreads reviews are negative, and most of them are people saying that they were rooting for the author, but that this book had a lot of problems with it. I could only really find one Goodreads review that I thought was rude or not constructive. I otherwise thought that the reviews that were on Goodreads and a lot of what I was seeing on TikTok at the time were people rooting for her. But there was this subset of people saying, no, the book was unfinished, she scammed people, she needs to give people their money back. And so I decided to pick up a copy for myself. That's right, for the first time ever for one of these drama videos, I actually got the dang book we're talking about, because I just had to know for myself, is it actually an unfinished draft, or are people just saying that because they didn't like how the book turned out and they're being mean? I'm 120 pages in. I don't know if you can see that. I wanted to finish it for the video. And I don't at all want to make it sound like I think this book is unreadable. I just felt like I had read enough to understand why people were saying what they were saying, and I didn't really feel called to continue reading. If I were to review this book at the point that I'm at, I would probably also unfortunately give it a 1 star, and I hand those out very sparingly. I understand what people are saying when they say that this feels like a draft. So these are just examples. There are other instances of stuff like this happening within the book, but I'm going to show you 2 examples that to me stuck out as something that I think probably should have been caught in an editing run, and that I am surprised made a final version of a book. But the first is that if you look at the underlined sentences, I actually only noticed that the second half of the sentence was repeated, but I saw somebody talking about how the first half was repeated too. Though midwinter raged throughout the rest of the Guardian, Conviction Woods kept its humid warmth year-round. Then on the very next page it says, though midwinter raged throughout the rest of the Guardian, Conviction Woods kept its humid warmth all year long. So the sentence is ever so slightly different, but kind of a repetition. But really, the one that I think is way bigger is in this chapter 2, we learn of a map that our main character has. I reached down to unbutton my bag, pulling out a wrinkled map of Conviction Woods. Dad, Avia's father, and my adoptive father had drawn it for me years ago. The ink was fading from the sunlight it'd been exposed to while I explored the woods. I placed it down on the table and slid it in front of Avia, tracing my index finger alongside the dotted border of Conviction and Assiduous, resting my finger on top of a mark I'd made. If we skip to the next page, I focused back on my map, running my index finger across it. The only details were in the sections of Conviction Woods, and even then, there were many blank spots where where my legs could not reach in a day or two. The other 3/4 of my map had the names of other territories written out: societal, assiduous, and autarchic. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. Soon I'd be able to detail the mysterious splotches of untouched paper. Dad had left them blank when I was young, so I could expand the map as I grew older. So we've been introduced to a map that her father, who travels a lot, drew for her. She has been marking up this map as she explores the woods, but large swatches of it are blank, and there are other territories, areas that she has not explored yet. So that was on page 22, I think. Pages 21 through 23. On page 100, we get this paragraph. I slid my backpack off my shoulders to pull one of my maps from the side pockets. A few years back, Dad had given me a world map with latitude and longitude he'd found in one of the Altarian markets as a birthday gift. I had yet to use it, but always carried it with me in hopes that one day it would be useful. So to be fair, this paragraph says one of my maps, but in chapter 2, we were introduced to a map that was drawn for her by her dad that has the whole world on it, that she's only marked up the areas she's been to, and she's marked it up a bunch. Now we're being introduced to a world map that was also given to her by her dad, but it was purchased at a market and she had never used it before. I could extend her the benefit of the doubt and say that these are two different maps, but she went out of her way to mention the first time she introduced the map that there were all these other territories on it that were blank because she hadn't been there, and it was a map of the world that her dad had drawn. So to then have a different map that her dad had also given her, but this one is one that he purchased, but it is a map of seemingly the same exact area that she was given a map of that her dad had drawn. This very much feels to me 100% like something that would happen in a draft. Now, to be fair, I have never published, so one could argue that I have zero expertise in writing. Per Audra's own definition of what it takes to have experience in writing, I myself have a lot of experience working on a manuscript that I do hope to eventually publish, needing a map and coming up with a reason why that map exists, and then coming up with a different reason why that map exists 10 chapters later is 100% something that would happen on a first draft, and that on the second draft you're going through, you would get to that second part and be like, wait a minute, I did in fact already explain where the map came from. There's a bunch of other instances of stuff like that, and then there is a formatting error. I was only able to find one, but I'm also only 120 pages in, but I don't know if you can see that this sentence, this top sentence here, in the middle of the sentence, it just enters down onto a new line. Those are some of the reasons why people were saying it felt like a draft. You'll remember from her initial statement that she worked with a very talented team of editors, and at that point in time was already somewhat frustrated and resistant to people making comments that she hadn't edited the book. There were some people speculating as to whether or not those editors scammed her, but I've seen a lot of professional editors say, dude, the job is to read the book and provide recommendations for a revision. If a person doesn't take the recommendations, that's not our business at all. And I have seen a professional editor say that they've had instances where they have told authors that they didn't think a book was ready to publish, and the author went to publishing anyway. It's just their job to provide the feedback. If the author doesn't want to take the feedback, then the author doesn't have to take the feedback. It's their book after all. It's entirely possible she hired these editors. They are credited. That doesn't mean she listened to them. And not only that, but I want to call back to the comment that she made about when she does a revision, she just starts the draft over from front to back. It is not unheard of for authors to do this. However, I have never heard of a successful book going straight from even a revision rewrite from front to back straight to publishing. People usually do at least one, if not multiple passes through the book to revise it after finishing that first draft. If this is how she revises, then she just continues to create first drafts. And even if those drafts are improving as she learns, these are the things she's not going to catch. She already explained where the map came from, but then when she's working on this chapter later on, if she doesn't remember that she already explained where the map came from, she's coming up with a different reason why the map existed. That is a perfectly understandable thing to have happen in a first draft, but a very hard to wrap your brain around thing to pass through multiple revisions. Given the amount of these sorts of things that were in this book, the amount of inconsistencies, the amount of contradictions, I am going to be honest, I find it very hard to believe that she had this many beta readers. Whether or not she had these editors and these beta readers, I have no idea. Okay, I need to secure that better. This is my first draft of this set. Like I said, I'm still working on it. I cannot speak to whether or not she actually had these editors and these beta readers. What I can say is that I would be very surprised, having read the first 120 pages of this book, that she listened to those people if she did have them read the book and give her notes. I say this so hesitantly because this is one of the criticisms that she has been very angry about. She has been very frustrated by the accusation that the book clearly wasn't edited. I understand that she is saying that it was. Maybe it's an important lesson for her that it does not read like it was, and it is leading people to wonder whether or not she's telling the truth about having editors and beta readers, / whether or not she listened to the feedback from them if she did use them. That being said, those weren't people's only issues with the book. I actually think people might have been fairly forgiving of that stuff if those were the only problems. I do agree that the dialogue feels very unnatural, and in my opinion, the plot is very convenient. There's a lot of things that happen. They didn't feel super realistic, and it felt like she was looking for a way to drive the story along. There was a letter that just absolutely proved all of their suspicions about something that they just found. Things like that, where you're like, ooh, like, it's a little convenient. The world building is very confusing. Some people speculate whether or not the world building itself is too confusing and she needs to simplify how this world works. Other people think it might be in the delivery, and given that she has stressed how much time she has spent thinking about her world, this further fed into the theory that if she used editors and beta readers, she might not have listened to the feedback, because a lot of people felt like this read like a book written by somebody who already had a really deep understanding of this world and kind of thought you were gonna too. I actually don't know if there is a way to present this world in that it makes sense. I know that she has shared that the world specifically is the part that means the world to her. You know, she wanted control over her world. That's why she self-published. She's been saying this for years at this point, that that's the part that matters to her. So I don't want to sit here and say she has to change the world building to make the book work, because I do not know if she took the time and the care to justify some of how the world works and to explain it to the reader whether or not it would have worked. However, what I will say is that part of what made it feel unrealistic to me is that it didn't feel like the character's behavior matched the stakes we were told were there in relation to this government and how it operates. Let me explain what I mean by that. This is actually something I've said before about other published work. Specifically, a book that comes to mind is Iron Flame, which is the second book in the Fourth Wing series. One of the things that I said about that book is that we were told throughout the entire book that there was this urgency, that they had to do this thing, and that if they didn't do it, there was going to be this big problem. And yet, the characters spent a lot of the book not working towards solving the issue that they needed to solve on a time crunch. And not because they couldn't, but just because they weren't. And so, as the reader, I walked away from it feeling like the author had told me there was urgency, but she hadn't showed me that there was urgency. And so, I, as the reader, did not really feel the urgency. In my opinion, this book has a very similar problem, in that we are told that this is a super strict, super horrendous dystopian government that controls the people through these codes, and they will kill you if you break it. And yet our main character is incredibly flippant about it. We are even given a flashback with the main character where we're shown that she suffered abuse as a child for not being able to follow the Scorpio code, which says that she can't show emotion and she can't form bonds. She has shared as a part of all of this that this character is neurodivergent. She hasn't shared in exactly what way, but Audra has shared that she herself has ADHD and autism. I am a fellow young woman with ADHD, and I can tell you that it is a very real ADHD experience to have been told to follow rules as a kid that you really struggled to follow and didn't really understand why they were so hard for you to follow, and that you still struggled to follow those rules as an adult and couldn't really wrap your brain around why until you got a diagnosis. That is what happened to me. I had that experience. She has actually used the fact that this character is neurodivergent as a defense against some criticism, specifically to do with some of the typos, some of the run-on sentences, some of the ways that the narrative voice itself is kind of confusing. I wonder if she's also used it in this way to say, well, this character is so flippant about the Scorpio code as an adult because they really struggle to follow it, and it's more of an ADHD thing than it is her just not thinking that there's pressure for her to follow it. However, in my experience, and this is just my experience, There's a lot of guilt associated with this, and I don't really feel like this character feels that guilt. She starts out the book somehow knowing that the Scorpio code is fake and that it didn't actually come from the gods. It's never really explained where she gets this theory from, but that is the thing that they confirm with this very convenient letter in chapter 3 or 4. She could maybe use the ADHD defense if this was the only instance of a character doing this. However, she makes a friend named Chase. Chase perceives her to be very strictly following the Scorpio code and refusing to drop it when they're alone. And he says to her something to the effect of, my dad's a Scorpio, and when we're in the house, he completely drops it and he doesn't follow it. And I guess I just thought all Scorpios are like that, but maybe you really do follow the code all the time. Brother, if the Scorpios get killed for not following this code, why is this man just sharing the information that his dad doesn't follow the code half the time to another Scorpio, especially one that he perceives as being one who is very strictly following the code at this point in time? It doesn't make any sense. And these are just examples of this happening, but this pops up so much throughout the book. We hear that something's super dangerous, and then the characters just have no sense of danger in doing it. They get a key to a restricted area, and they just go there with no reconnaissance, no planning, no scoping out to see if there's guards or if anybody's even back there at the time that they try to go back there. They're running from people who are chasing them, and then they're just snatched by a guy and thrown in a building, and they're not suspicious at all that this man means them harm or is trying to arrest them. Literally, before they find out who he is or why he grabbed them and threw them into this building, the character is described as shaking out her coat and looking around the room. Like, you're running from people who are chasing you and trying to arrest you, and then a man you don't know grabs you for an unknown reason and throws you into a building. You are telling me that they don't assume that he means them harm? And he did turn out to be a friendly, but how would they have known that? There's a bunch of stuff like that where it's just like, we're told this government is super dangerous, but none of the characters behave as if it's so. It has the core issue that I see so much in dystopian, where if you approach building a dystopian government from an angle of how do I build a government that has awful, terrible rules, sometimes you end up in a problem where you have a dystopian government, but there isn't really a reason why it exists. What do the people in government gain from the society being like this? And what do the people think they gain from following the rules? In this book, we are led to believe that it's a danger thing and that the reason people follow the code is because they don't want to be murdered. We're led to believe that the reason people haven't revolted against the code and that they still follow it is that it was given by the gods themselves. And so she's trying to prove that it wasn't actually given by the gods so that the people understand that it wasn't the gods that made these rules, and so they can all just stop following them because they don't need to. But if people think that the rules are in place because the gods wanted them, then why are they only following them within the eyes of the government? And why does everybody seem to be so flippantly okay with breaking the rules when the government isn't looking at them? These things... Oh, we fully lost the vine. We have fully lost the vine. You can see I was using it to cover this. These bookshelves don't line up perfectly. Pay no attention to that. Moving on. All of that to say that I don't know if the problem is in the world building itself or the delivery of it or whatever it might be. But in my opinion, it doesn't make sense. These things can't exist together. The people either are following the code because they believe it's divine, in which case they are very, very devoted to it, or they are following it because they're scared of the government, in which case they might be willing to break the rules away from the government. But if that's the case, why would proving the Scorpio code is fake help then? If people are only following it because that's what the government wants, why have they not already revolted? Why would it matter to them if the rules came from the gods or not if they are willing to break the rules outside of the sight of the government? You see what I mean? I feel like we're told there's danger, but the characters don't behave as though the danger is there. We're told that there's this dystopian government, but the characters don't behave as though they're very afraid of it. And we're told that they're running from these people and it's this high intensity situation, but then the second they get snatched, they just trust the person who grabbed them and everything that they tell them. We're told that the Conviction Woods is this crazy forest where nobody can survive in it, but for some reason our main character and her family don't get killed by the forest, and this is super rare and they don't know anybody else who can do that, and they've never seen anybody else back there, only to almost immediately form a crew of people who all somehow have this special exception from the woods, and all of them can just go in and out of the woods. If it's that rare for people to not get killed by the woods to the degree where they have never seen anybody else back there but members of their own family, then how is it that they so immediately stumble upon somebody else who also isn't going to be killed by the woods? And the assassin that they send to kill them also isn't killed by the woods. Like, these are the problems, honestly. And to me, it's a chicken or an egg thing. Is the issue with the world building itself? Is it in the presentation of it? Is it in the way the characters feel about it? I don't know. All I can tell you is I do not think that in its current form, it was ready for publishing. And I do believe that a professional editor worth their salt probably would have told her that. So that's the book itself. Now, finally, after all this time, let's dive into her 2 video responses. We had the 2 text reactions, and then we had a video where she said that she was going to pull the physical copies down so you can't order them anymore, and she is going to do another revision that she is going to put up in December. Pre-orders are already open for that revision, so you can purchase one right now if you want, and that she's sourcing an editor from her audience to help. And she specifically said that she really wants that editor to comb through the manuscript and mark it up like crazy. She wants their help with narrative voice. She wants their help with dialogue. She wants their help with proper sentence structure and things like that.
My name is Audra Winter, and I am going to be redoing this book. My entire life flipped upside down. I was in so much shock that I absolutely lost sight of what was most important, and that was delivering my voice and my story in the best way that I could. We're re-releasing the entire thing. I have taken the feedback and the criticisms that I've received, especially in the past week, and I have discussed them and processed them in this time that I was not on the app, and I genuinely so badly want to make this the best that it can be. I am recruiting a copy editor and a proofreader from my audience, so people that are watching my videos, because I am receiving a lot of wonderful feedback. And I do have a lot of authors and writers and editors who follow me, and there are people who want to help, and I'm seeing that and I'm recognizing that, so I want to be able to find someone from my readers and from the people who are supporting me to be on my team. Some of the things that we have already looked at changing and have plans to change would be the narration style and the voice, exposition, obviously copy edits and line edits and removing those errors, content addition and revision, more charts and guides, and dialogue.
Some people are calling out how strange it is that she's saying she wants to source an editor from the audience. I wonder if the reason she's doing that is because the tier of editing she is looking for is a lot closer to a co-author than it is to an editor. I wonder if she was initially struggling to find a professional editor who is willing to do that tier of revision. The tier of revision that she is talking about is typically done by the author. But if somebody is doing that, they're not an editor anymore. They're a co-author. An editor reads the book and gives you the notes that they think you should change. A copy editor goes through and looks for typos specifically. Typos, misuse of words, and grammatically incorrect sentences, that is it. So if you want somebody to go through and mark up where the narrative voice sounds weird and then change it, that is a tier of editing that isn't really considered in the purview of any editor in the professional writing space. If you are a professional author, the expectation is that that tier of revision is one that you are doing yourself. And I just want to go back to her comment that when she does revision, she just starts the book from front to back. I genuinely at this point in time believe, and this is just my opinion, that she has never read this book through to do an edit. She wrote the draft front to back, she sent it out to the editors, she was expecting them to come back and say, it's great, it's beautiful, it's lovely, I love it. Instead, they maybe possibly told her they didn't think it was ready for publishing and she went through with it anyway. I would be shocked to hear that she did a revision of this book based off of the first 120 pages that I read. I agree with the stance that while she has said she had an editor and she has said that she has beta readers and she has said that she did all of these things and she did multiple revisions, given where the book is at, I find it hard to believe either that she worked with these editors or that she listened to them if she did. I know I've already said that, but I just want to reiterate that. She has been very, very upset at people saying this and has been adamant all the way up until now that this book has been through a bunch of revisions and that she has edited it. Girl, it does not read like that is true. Don't get angry at people saying that that's how it reads. Don't say it's misinformation. Don't say people are lying. We understand that you have told us that you worked with these people. We are telling you that the book does not read like you listened to them. The book does not even read like you went through and did one big edit. It reads like a first draft. I can attest to that. And that's just an opinion, right? It's my opinion that it reads like a first draft, but that is my opinion. I switched to my desk chair because I was sitting on my old piano stool and it's very creaky. And for the majority of filming, that hasn't really been a problem because I've just been sitting in a really specific way. But I've been filming for so long now that I started to get uncomfortable. So I was shifting around, so it was creaking on like every sentence that I said. The irony of me having this many problems filming this set for the first time and saying this book reads like a first draft. But anyway, she ends out this video by talking extensively about the difference between constructive criticism and bullying and the amount of bullying and harassment that she has received over the course of this whole situation.
However, criticism and bullying are two different things. In the span of a single day, I went from readers trying to help to hearing some of the most horrible things that could be said to me. So severe, in fact, that TikTok literally had to put multiple anti-bullying protections on my page.
I myself also post on the internet, so I know that it is a pretty horrendous place, and I know that people can be very mean. However, I have been paying attention to the situation for multiple days now. I have watched countless TikToks and think pieces on it. I've read a lot of comments. I've read all of the Goodreads reviews. I even ended up on the Romantasy Circle Jerk subreddit. And at the point of filming, I am struggling to find a large majority of people bullying her. The majority of the statements that I can find are people saying that they're rooting for her, that they believe in her, and that they think if she takes the feedback and comes back with a better version of this book, that she can win back a lot of people and have success. It appears to me like she may think that constructive criticism is bullying. And again, I don't doubt that there aren't the occasional person out there who is being really mean to her, because the internet is a terrible place. But she is framing this out to be this massive harassment campaign against her that maybe has some fair criticism peppered in there. Whereas what I can find is a massive movement of constructive criticism and of people who are rooting for her and who are giving her this feedback because she has shared how badly she wants to be a successful author. I do not doubt that there are people out there who are being mean to her. I am sure that they exist, and you guys should stop it because that's not cool. That being said, that is not what the mass movement has been. That is not what the mass reaction to this has been. The majority of people that I have seen talking about this have been incredibly charitable to her, incredibly understanding, and have really just emphasized the point that the book needs a bit more revision before it's ready for publishing. But again, she said she was gonna revise the book. She said she was gonna put it out in December. She was looking for an editor from her audience, and she was putting more art into the book, and she was gonna put out a hardcover with sprayed edges. So that was her initial reaction. And my reaction to that was, I don't know that she walked away from this with the right lesson. And again, in my original thought process, that was going to be my final point in this video. My point here at this point in time was going to be, I don't think she's learned the right lesson. I think she needs to take a full step back. I think she needs to do at least one revision of this book herself, and she maybe needs to learn how to be less defensive, because I'm not saying that it's fair that in order to be a creator of any kind that you have to tolerate some of the vitriol that you can experience online. However, the fact of the matter is, if you want to be a professional author, you have to learn how to deal with people reading your book and not liking it and having criticism. She has shown in a pattern of behavior on her page that she really struggles to deal with people having anything negative to say about anything she's doing, even if they're being constructive and kind. She was also very upset that people were calling her a scammer. People had said that she was a Nepo baby. She included in this video response some of the misinformation that's out there. Most of these comments are somewhat far-fetched theories. However, I will say that when there was a really hard shift in her content when I was scrolling through her TikTok, I was super confused as to how she went from begging for money for a Kickstarter to having 15 to 20 employees or whatever, or now we know contractor employees. How did she go from that to six-figure business entrepreneur? Like, I had a moment where I was like, does she have family money? And then I really dug into it and I figured out what happened. I don't think it's that insane that people were speculating as to whether or not she has some money in her family. The industry plan theory is pretty far-fetched, but the final comment in this that she includes, I think, is mostly, if not all, very fair criticism. And I think the fact that she incorporated this into a set of comments that she was saying were misinformation shows to me that she either believes this stuff isn't true or that she is trying to convince you the viewer that this stuff isn't true. This last comment says, I wouldn't recommend comparing yourself to her. Part of the pushback is because she wouldn't allow ARC readers to review. Pause. I was not able to corroborate that. That is the only part of this comment that I am not sure is true. There were not ARC reviewers. I do not know why. I have seen some people say she just didn't send them out. I've seen other people say that she did send them out, but they were too close to the publishing date. And I've seen other people say that she wouldn't let them write reviews. That third one makes no sense to me because she doesn't have control over what they post on TikTok. She doesn't have control over what they post on Goodreads. How would she have prevented them from writing a review? So I don't really know what's going on with the ARCs. I was not able to find any reviews from ARC reviewers. So for some reason, there were not ARC reviews. I do not know why that is. But the rest of this comment, from what I can tell, is fairly fair. And used her autism and sexuality as a shield to deflect and shame people who didn't like her work. I don't know about the sexuality piece of this. I already talked about the video where she was talking about how her character is representation and that the narrative voice is because of that, and she was using that to deflect the criticism and say that that was why she wrote it that way, and so people who didn't like it just didn't understand it. Basically, it seems to me like she was deflecting criticism in saying this character is neurodivergent and that's why she thinks the way that she thinks, or her internal monologue is the way that it is, and so if that doesn't jive with you, that's probably why. And that to me is deflecting blame. Not to mention she decided to spend thousands on a team of 20 plus people with an IP universe without having ever published before. That's objectively true. We don't know how much money she paid these artists, but she's the one out here saying six-figure business, 15 to 20 artists. So surely that can't be the part of this comment that she thinks is misinformation, because that's come out of her own mouth. And that is fair critique. She might have her priorities in the wrong place. She might have focused on making this a very beautiful book with a lot of art and didn't really actually go through and maybe revise the manuscript the way that, should I use the word she should have? I don't know. I guess it's up to you. You can put out whatever art you want, but people don't have to like it, you know? So I think people would have liked it a lot more if she had done more revision. And it's fair to say that she commissioned all these artists, if not as paying some of their salaries, because the way that she's framed this has been very confusing, and that maybe she shouldn't have done that. And maybe she should have focused on the manuscript first. That's fair. Not to mention the reality the book clearly hadn't been edited. I've already covered this. She has been very upset at people saying that they think it's obvious the video wasn't edited. People are just speaking to what they read in the book. It does not read like it was edited. I know that that's not something that she is enjoying hearing, but that is seemingly the reality of the situation. That's how I feel at the very least. And that's what the majority of the criticism that she's got is based around. But this brings me to the response she posted this very morning, where my mood on this whole thing completely shifted. Because even up to this point, I still was like, oh, I think she just maybe doesn't understand what the criticism is. I'm rooting for her. She's young. I want her to understand what the feedback is so that she can implement it, so that she can come back stronger. And my main points of feedback were the book does need a little bit of revision, and that she maybe should take a little bit more time than a few months. And also that I think she needs to be less defensive, and she needs to keep her narrative and her storylines really clear. Because as soon as you start to contradict yourself, like she has with the whole story surrounding this agent that she had, people are going to start to wonder if other things that you said aren't true, especially if you have a tendency to twist and maybe lie a little bit to make yourself sound better when you are being really defensive against criticism. I think it's fair for that to lead people to wonder if you're being 100% truthful in everything that you've shared. And that's why I went that in depth about that, because I think that's important. So up to this point, that was my reaction. Then I saw this response. I was gobsmacked, absolutely flabbergasted, bamboozled. I cannot properly express in words how different I feel about this situation having watched this video. She posted it this morning as of me filming this. I'm filming on Thursday, August 7th. I'm probably not posting this until Sunday. If there are updates, I'll cut in with more video of me.
Hey. So I thought it was important, if I'm going to be as critical as I'm about to be of this statement that she made, that I include the whole thing. So I wasn't going to edit it at all, however. There was a lot of dead space. So I did cut out the dead space where she paused in between talking. It's just because this video runtime is already super long. I did not cut out her actually saying anything, although I do pause sometimes when she's in the middle of a sentence, so keep that in mind as well. But I linked her full response in the description if you want to just go watch her video front to back. Again, I didn't cut her saying anything out, I just cut out dead space.
My name is Audra Winter. I am the author of this book. It was released about a month ago, and I have lived through the worst week of my life because of it in the past week. And I just wanted to come on here and talk about it and be genuine and express the things that I have been through in the past week, because I'm literally living through my worst nightmare and my biggest heartbreak. If you're not familiar, I have spent a very long time working on this world that I started building when I was 12, and I'm 22 now. And throughout that time, it is the only thing that has stayed consistent in my life. It is the only thing that I have been able to lean on every single night and say, hey, at the end of the day, I have this and I have these stories. And even if nobody else in the world likes it, I do. And I like telling these stories. Now, I hope that other people will like it, and I would love for it to bring the same joy to other people that it brought to me. And it means a lot to me. This is not just a hobby, it is a passion. It is quite literally my entire life now. As in, right now I'm sitting in my room. That is my bed next to me where I sleep, and right outside of there is my office. This is my desk that I write at. I have no escape from this. And I don't need an escape from it because it does matter to me this much. This has been the thing in this world and these stories that when I have gone through the worst parts of my life, I could look over and say, well, I have this and I have this world, and I can't die yet before I publish this and before other people can see it, because I've worked on it this much. I would really like other people to enjoy it. I would like other people to share this world that has saved my life. It is bizarre to see your will to live come alive in front of your eyes, and I started to see that back in April when I put up a pre-order listing for this book. Did not think I...
Okay, I want to pause it there. I watched the first like 30-ish seconds of this and had the thought that it might be leading in a direction of her saying, maybe this isn't the world I publish in. I understand that this is a passion project for you and that this world means a lot to you, and that based off of some of what you've said, that potentially is why it didn't work out with the agency, is because you didn't want to make changes to the world, or at least that's why she shared she went the self-publishing route, right? And maybe if that's the case, maybe this just isn't the world you publish. Maybe you're too close to it. Maybe you care about it too much. Maybe the criticism is hurting you too much because you care about it so much. And it's okay as an author or as an artist in general to have a passion project that isn't the art that you make money on. But you are not entitled to other people's money. Just because this is your passion doesn't mean that you are entitled to people paying you money for copies of that book. Those are different things. And if people are going to pay money for a book, then they are entitled to have an opinion on it and have a feeling about the product that they got. And if people don't like it, then that's their opinion. And maybe that means that this isn't the right world for you to publish in. At the end of the day, if you are going to put your art out in the world because you want to make money off of it, then you have to be prepared for the fact that that means that some people might not like it. There is no world in which you can work as an artist and you are not making money off of your patrons. Even if your paycheck is technically coming from a publisher or technically coming from YouTube AdSense or whatever it might be, those companies are giving you money because they are making money off the patrons. And so no matter what, eventually the money comes from the people who enjoy consuming your art. And so if they don't enjoy consuming the art, then they don't consume it and you don't make the money, and then it isn't your career. That is the difference between art as a hobby and art as a career. I've seen so many authors over the years get mad about reviews because they just for some reason feel this entitlement to having a successful release because it's something they care about. That's why I was like, maybe this is just her passion project. Maybe she does write something else to release it and this is just her passion. Then she gets into the part of the video where she starts talking about how this world has saved her life and it's her will to live at points, to like live essentially to publish this book. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and I'm saying this as somebody who is also neurodivergent and also has really struggled with my mental health, this is disgusting and incredibly manipulative. Telling people that this story has been what has kept you alive, and so people criticizing it is putting that at risk, it's like when somebody tries to break up with somebody else and that person responds with, well, I'm gonna myself if you do. Like, your mental health is not the responsibility of your readers. If you are actually in a fragile enough mental place where that is a risk, you should be in a hospital. Being mentally well does not mean that you're happy at all times. The difference is whether or not that happiness sends you into a spiral of self-harm. That is the difference between having a bad day and being mentally ill. You can be mentally well and go through a rough time in your life, and you can be mentally well through that time. It's about how you handle the negative things things that happen to you. I say this with love and I say this with compassion. If this is true, if your will to live is actually falling apart in front of your eyes because of the way that this publishing run has gone, then you need to go to a hospital. You are not mentally well. But that is not the fault of your readers, and that is not the fault of the people who didn't like the book. And it's not fair to essentially say, you can't say you didn't like my book, because if you do, I'll myself.
Oh, quick legal defense of myself. Okay, quick legal protection. She never actually says that. She never says those words. I feel, and this is just my opinion, that the implication of this video is that. And you might think I'm being harsh here up front just from what we've watched. You gotta wait till we watch the whole response. I'm just trying to protect myself because I just said you can't say blah, blah, blah. She never technically says those words. Through this whole video, she never technically says the words, you can't criticize my book or all, whatever. In my opinion, this is very manipulative. I don't think that she's talking about this to be honest about how all of this has impacted her. I think that she's talking about this to try and get across to people that this story means so much to her that, like, if she doesn't succeed as an author, like, she says a lot of stuff in this video that, like, if she were in a psychiatric appointment and she said that to a psychiatrist or to a therapist, they'd be, like, calling a hospital in the background. Like, it's the implication of what she's saying. And so even if she never directly says the words, in my opinion, it's the implication of the words she's saying. But that's just my opinion. She never technically says those words. Definitely watch the words that she says and make your own assumption. You don't have to agree with me just because that's what I interpreted this as. It's just my interpretation of the words she's saying. She never technically says the words, I'm gonna blank if you guys don't like my book.
I'm getting more and more angry about this the more I'm talking about it. What is wrong with you? This is what I mean about, like, I was jaw on the floor, gobsmacked, bamboozled, and we haven't even gotten to the, well, okay, objectively speaking, that probably is the worst part, but she goes on to flat out lie. And that was the part where I really was like, oh my God. But I will say that from an objective moral perspective, this is probably worse than that. If that is true, again, you need to be in the hospital, you need professional help, and no matter what, that is not the fault of your readers, and that is not the fault of the people delivering this criticism. It would only be their fault if they were saying you should yourself. And again, the world is an awful place. The internet's an awful place. I'm not saying there hasn't been one person maybe who's DM'd that to her or commented it somewhere or something. But the majority of the criticism that I've seen is very fair and is from people who are rooting for you and want this book to be good, and we're just trying to give you feedback as to how to make it better. And if your response to that is I'm gonna myself, then I cannot say this enough. Go to a hospital. That is where you need to be because you are not well. And if that's not the case, then saying that in this video is pure manipulation. It's disgusting. Again, it's the equivalent of threatening that on a partner when they leave you. You're trying to get people to behave in a way by saying that if they don't, you are going to harm yourself and making it sound like it is their fault that you harm yourself if that happens. Oh my God, that made me so mad. Okay.
I would sell more than 100 copies, quite honestly. And once again, I posted that pre-order listing and it took off. I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. At this time, I had started to build like a team of artists, but it was informal at first because I was like, well, all these people are working on different things for the series and I might as well put them in one group. And that is what I ended up doing with all the money that came in from this book. I ended up creating a studio, a whole creative studio with this because I decided that I rather the artists that I had brought together and the artists that I saw that were bonding over these stories that I had created, people who were falling in love with this world and with these characters as much as I did in the very beginning. And I thought that was beautiful. I had, for the first time, a sense of understanding. I've kind of gone my entire life having this as such a core fundamental part of me, and to be able to finally be recognized and let this become who I am was incredible. Even like getting on TikTok and talking about it, a lot of times I get a lot of comments that are like, how did you market it like this? And my genuine answer to that is I don't know. I get on here and I talk about
Okay, so text on the screen says, I don't have a background in marketing. I also didn't have a marketing plan. I don't play an internet persona. This is genuinely who I am day in and day out.
what I've done to get to this point and the different things that I love about it. It carried me far enough to get that many sales and to get that many. And I had this sense of understanding that I had never felt in my life before. And it was moving. It was shocking. It was moving. It was the amount of emotions that I was just thrown into in a short period of time, from the time that I listed that pre-order and the time that I established an LLC was 2 weeks. All of a sudden I was going into attorneys and I was like, what do I do? Like, I was not expecting this to happen. And I think I want to build a business off of this. Like, I want to keep being an entrepreneur. I want to put everything that I have, now that I have this, let's put it into this, because this is what I want to live the rest of my life around. I ended up in late June, early July, packing and shipping and signing 5,000 books with a very small team, literally with my parents and 3 other people. Sarah, if you're watching this, I really appreciate you. And the last month, I have experienced more fear than I ever have in my entire life. That fear, surrounded the fact that I had put every single thing in me into this book, every single thing. And it is...
So then there's this text on the screen. Up to this point, I wrote multiple books. I had beta readers. I was in critique groups. I have completed a creative writing minor. I have attended conferences. I have written every single day since I was 12. I had been contracted by a literary agency and worked with developmental editors there. I made the choice to go independent when my literary agency dropped all of their sci-fi fantasy writers. I could have found a new agent, but I was ready to share my story. I then hired 2 skilled industry editors, both developmental and copy. I listened. I spent hours revising and changing. I wrote pages upon pages of changes from editorial notes. I got on a call with my editor. I discussed them. I changed more. I looked at and incorporated my copy editor's suggestions. I paid my 2 proofreaders. I paid 2 proofreaders. I proofread. Okay. I paid 2 proofreaders, comma, I proofread. So she had 2 proofreaders other than her, and then she proofread it. I had a team that loved it, comma, that understood. So again, the implication being that people who don't like it just don't get it. I marketed that I wanted to break away from the industry that I felt trapped under. I wrote different. I wrote to tell a story. I wrote as an art. And I tried my very best to convey to readers that I knew my writing was different. Okay. So once again, we are back to she got dropped by the agents, but she got dropped because they don't do sci-fi and fantasy anymore. Again, on their website, it says that they do. So do with that information what you will. The website could be wrong, I suppose. She has also shared that some of her motivation for going the self-publishing route is because she wanted control over her world. And also in her angry video said that she left the agency because she wanted control over her world. Both of those statements implying that they wanted revisions and she potentially did not want to do those revisions. That's the implication of those statements, right? The story with the agency has changed so much. In my opinion, I don't think that she was dropped because they stopped doing sci-fi fantasy. Or if they did, they really need to update their website because it is super out of date. And again, I specifically looked at the profile of the agent that she named years ago as being her agent. Specifically, not just the agency, but like her agent, right? So then she goes on to share all of this information about the amount of editing that this book went through. I'm so sorry, Queen. It does not read as though it went through that many rounds of editing. I understand that it is hurtful to you to hear that. However, that is how the book reads. Maybe it did go through all this editing, and maybe she didn't get this feedback. I find that to be far-fetched, but it's also a potential that it went through all these rounds of editing and she wasn't listening to the feedback. Like, these people could have given her feedback that she wasn't listening to. But no matter what, the part that matters is that the book does not read like that is true. And I think it is fair for people to express that they have doubts that it went through as many rounds of editing as you are claiming that it does when it has this many problems. I only called out 2, but those were just examples. This book does feel like a draft. She had a team that loved it, that understood, again, with this implication that the people who don't like it just don't understand it. And she wrote to tell a story, wrote as an art, and tried very hard to convey to readers that I knew my writing was different. All of that is well and good. That doesn't mean you're entitled to sales, and that doesn't mean that you are entitled to people liking the book that they received. You can write for art. Art is art, and art is valid. But making money off of your art is a different thing. And if people are paying money for your art, then they have a right to have an opinion on it, and they have a right to express that they don't think it was money well spent. And they also have a right to tell other people that they don't think that they should spend their money on the book. And if you don't want that to happen, then you have to write a book that people want to read. And you can't just come out and say you have to want to read it or you're going to damage my mental health, because that's not fair to anybody. Let's continue.
5,000 of these out to that many people at once, all receiving this highly anticipated, talked about thing. I've been on TikTok since 2018. I was there for hit or miss. I know that a lot of times especially with like certain medias and creative avenues, it takes one negative video to spin it out of control. I actually had to go back to Kansas because I was becoming
So, okay, so we're still in her timeline and her recollection leading up to the publishing. And she's saying she had to go back to Kansas, which I assume is where she's from, before the current situation. You can see a change in my demeanor and eyes after I started posting about shipping books out. I just wanted people to enjoy it, and I was so scared of people hating it. And she's saying she went back to Kansas because she was becoming so unhealthy. And she's made a comment about how it takes one negative video to spin things out of control. Remember that. Hold that in your mind. That's going to become important.
so unhealthy. I wasn't eating, and quite honestly, I'm still not.
Okay, go to a hospital. Like dead ass, straight up. If your mental health is at the point that you're not eating and you're considering hospital, there's nothing wrong with admitting that you need help. There is something wrong with turning to the internet and saying, I need help, so you guys need to like my book, because if you don't, that might lead to more self-harm and more destructive behaviors. And I hope I'm not overstepping by saying this. You were the one who shared this. As somebody who has struggled with their mental health, if these things are genuine, you need help. You need to step away from the internet and you need to address your mental health first. People are still allowed to have criticism, even if that's the case, as long as they're delivering it kindly. And again, the majority of what I have seen has been kind and constructive. You don't get to tell people they don't get to do that because you're not mentally well.
I had to go back to my parents because they were concerned about me. Everybody else was concerned about me because everybody in my personal circle knows that this is like everything to me. A couple days ago, I was up early and I was scrolling through my For You page. I unfortunately came across a video of another author talking about me. I felt something change in me that moment. The amount of like heart dropping that I felt while watching that video will stick with me forever. And I opened these comments and there's tons of people all going, I was worried about this video was about me until you said these numbers. I just sat there for a little bit and went, how can you say that you were worried that it would be you? And then proceed to turn around and say that about another author. When I saw that video,
Okay, I could actually explain why that might be the case. We haven't gotten far enough into her response for me to address what she just said about the video from the author being critical of her, but specifically the comment she just made of how can people say, oh, I was worried this was going to be about me, and then they turn around and are being insulting towards her. There are people out there who might have been concerned that whoever made this video that she's referencing was criticizing some indie new author release because they were concerned that their release contained the issues that this person was expressing. They might have been concerned for the quality of their work, not for the fact that they were maybe getting backlash for the quality of their work. And then if they found out that somebody else's book was at that quality, they maybe then felt it was fair to turn around, read the book themselves, and corroborate that in their opinion, it is also at that quality. I do not know what video she's referencing, and she'll bring this video back up and we'll talk about it more later. But when she does, I still do not know which video she's talking about. I've seen so many people now having spoken about this situation that I do not know which indie author she's talking about, but I do know it's an indie author based off of other information she's given. She is beginning to make the point that that negative video is why everybody feels negatively towards her book. Let's continue.
Closed out the app and I went to my studio space and I said I'm fucked. Up until this point, I had very positive reader reception. I was thinking
that is not true. And that's what I mean about straight up lying. And now we're gonna get into the real meat and potatoes. 2.5 fucking hours into filming, and I can drop the F-bomb now because Lord knows the YouTube scrubber isn't even looking anymore. Dude, I went to look at Goodreads. She published this book on June 27th. Do you remember what I told you to remember? What did I tell you to remember? It was like an hour ago now. I told you to remember that we do not know when people actually received the book. We know the publication date. If she shipped the books out on that date, we do not know what date people received them. When I saw her seeing this, I went on to Goodreads. Bear in mind it's frozen, so you cannot leave a Goodreads review on this book right now. It got frozen over the weekend, I'm pretty sure, but there are 100-something reviews, which isn't enough for it to really be review bombing, in my opinion. If this was a mass review bombing from the amount of people who have seen this situation, there would probably be significantly more. But not only that, there are reviews on there from 20 to 30 days ago, as of me filming this, of people giving it a 1 star and giving it negative critique. All the same critiques that are what people are saying now. If it's currently August 7th, She published the book on June 27th. If somebody left a review 30 days ago, that implies that they left the review sometime around July 6th or 7th, which means they would have immediately received the book after publishing, have read it, and then felt that way about it. There are 2-star and 1-star reviews going back that far. So the initial reaction to the book was not overwhelmingly positive. I can tell that from that alone. There were people who received the book in that first shipment who essentially immediately gave it a negative review.
Not to cut in again here, sorry, but another thing I was thinking about in editing is that she made that video where she was talking about the narrative voice on July 9th. Now, she has said that she wasn't making that as a response to any criticism, but a lot of people have wondered if that was kind of her initial response to people saying that the narrative voice is really confusing and weaves around a bunch and it's hard to follow, and that she posted that as almost a defense as to why it was that way. People are assuming that she said in her own comments that she was just talking about narrative voice and it wasn't a response to any of the critique. But wait a minute, let me live check my own screenshot of that comment. Where's my phone? Because when did that person respond to her saying, oh, did I not screenshot the whole thing? Okay, I don't know when the commenter said, what a funny way to deflect criticism. But she said, genuinely not sure what criticisms you were talking about, like that whole comment on the July 11th. Is when she left that response, which means that somebody commented, what a funny way to deflect from criticisms of how the narrative voice sounds. And she responded back to that comment on the 11th. This book was published on June 27th. And she's going to sit here now and claim that she was getting overwhelmingly positive reviews until some author made some negative video and now everybody's being negative about it. Doesn't seem that way to me. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't seem that way to me.
Why would she say something that's so provably false? This is what I don't understand.
Aware of what people were saying, and it was way more positive than negative. When
I cannot find any evidence of that.
Saw this video and I saw the things that were being said, I knew. And literally within hours, I was getting...
In the matter of hours, my comments... In the matter of hours. Okay, listen, I'm not saying I'm above having a typo or something and something I typed up, but something about responding to criticism that your book isn't grammatically correct sometimes within the matter of hours. My comments went from some readers trying to help and give feedback to strangers doubling my bad reviews. I quickly lost sight of who my readers were with hundreds of hateful comments not intended to help me, my writing, or my community. So wait a minute. Was the feedback overwhelmingly positive, more positive than negative for sure? Some people kind of didn't like it. Or were your comments some readers trying to help and give feedback?
Dozens of comments with pure hatred. Literally hearing some of the hardest things that I've ever been told in my life. Hearing from lots of people that you're a bad writer. Hearing from lots of people with no other thoughts other than saying that it reads like it was written by a 12-year-old, that it reads like it was middle school, that surely I was being a scam and I was doing this to scam people. It was the worst thing they ever read.
I don't think I've mentioned that up to this point, but a lot of people did have that critique that it did very much read like it was written by a 12-year-old. I think that people are saying that because of the juvenile nature of some of the world building. I think that there are some things not taken into account with either the world building or the way it was presented that makes sense if you look at it through a lens of this world started to be conceptualized by someone who is very young. At least on Goodreads, the people that I've seen bring this up are still delivering constructive criticism and are doing so because they're rooting for her and they're trying to give her helpful feedback, which is exactly what she's claiming these exact comments were not for, where they said the author has shared that she started writing this when she was 12, and I honestly think that shows, and I think she needs to do a big revision now that she is an adult. So she is claiming that that's like an entirely negative, super rude comment, but I found these Goodread comments that I consider to be very constructive and very kindly worded that are making the same point. I just wanted to point that out. I don't doubt that people were being rude to her, though. Like I said, the internet's an awful place. I do not doubt that she is on some level getting some vitriol, but the majority of what I have seen has been constructive.
The worst thing they ever read. I don't even want to say some of the things that I had heard, and I was...
Okay, we're going to talk about her being doxxed. in a second.
Getting harassed by certain people that were going on to every single one of my videos and commenting these like nasty, like really concerning, nasty things that were not constructive criticism. Here I am.
I'm sure that is happening on some level, and those people need to stop it because that's not okay.
Here I am being told by dozens of people all at once the hardest things that I have ever heard in my life. Like the biggest fears that I have, things that impacted me so much. I didn't know what to do. I turned to my team and I was like, I'm carrying all these people, these 20 people that I have hired as contractors and employees, and I've failed them. I did something wrong.
Okay, what you did wrong was if they're actually salaried, like again, God, I'm like stuttering because I like can't, I'm so mad. So if they're contractors, then you're just commissioning them, in which case they are not entirely financially dependent on you. If their salaries are being paid by you, and if you actually hired 20 people off of 6,000 pre-orders, that was astronomically stupid. That's a horrendous business decision. 15 living wages? I'm pretty sure the average wage in the state of Arizona, which is where I live, is like $50,000 a year. So 15 people, $50,000 a year. Do the math, you can do it. I believe in you. I believe in myself. 15 times 5 is 30, 60, 75. $750,000 a year. And that's not to mention benefits if you're hiring them full time. So are they employees or are they contractors? Because if they're employees, that was a stupid financial decision for you to make. You had not made enough money to justify that. And you not being able to support them is in a little bit of a way your fault, because I don't know why you assumed you would be able to support that many salaries in that case. However, if they're contractors, then they are not financially depending on you because you were just commissioning them and they probably have other commissions that they're doing. Either way, this whole guilt trippy, like, what about my team? What about all my artists that are going to lose out? Like, I'm supporting them. What am I going to do? Da 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 da. Either it was a boneheaded decision on your part to think you could pay that many salaries, and it was honestly kind of boneheaded on their part to take the job, knowing the situation you were in, unless you misled them about your finances, or they're contractors, in which case they are going to be affected in that you are not going to commission things from them, but that's more of a missing out on a few commissions level financial impact as opposed to a drastic financial impact, them not having a way to pay their bills because you cannot pay them.
At first, it was like, I can't tell what I did wrong.
I'm gonna read the text first and then we'll keep watching the video. I genuinely did everything I could to put out the best product I could. I poured my heart into this book. Reflecting back on it now, I recognize there are changes and improvements to be made. I heard the voices of my readers and I realized after publishing that it can go through stronger editing. I'm so excited to improve it and do more with the story, but at the time of pushing it out, I truly felt like I put my best out to the world. There was no part of me that was trying to scam, sell a bad book, or felt like I could have done more. Though I see now improvements to be made, I would not have published a book that I did not think was ready. I actually am inclined to believe a lot of this statement. I believe that she believes that it was ready. I just also believe that she did that without the editors agreeing with her. Like, I don't doubt, given the story that she's told, that she thinks that this is the next big thing. I think it's a little bit, and maybe this is going to be a mean thing to say, but I'm sorry. Like I said, this response made me feel so differently about this situation because not only is she clearly not learning the lesson she needs to learn, but she's trying to blame this on other people in a way that just makes no sense. I wonder how much of this is a Dunning-Kruger effect thing. If you're not familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's this theory that sometimes the less you know about something, the better you think you are at it because you don't know any better. One of the things that I noticed through going through all of her TikToks is that she never, and I mean never, talks about reading. Nor does she ever talk about who her inspirations are. Just because she hasn't shared that information doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but she has been insistent this whole entire time that she has spent 3 hours writing a day. It is very hard to find a universal opinion on advice for writing from across the board on authors because everybody's process is so different, but there are two things that everybody says. The first is that your first draft is gonna suck and you shouldn't get discouraged because everybody's first draft sucks and you just have to edit it. And the second is that you need to read. And that if you don't read, you're never going to be successful as a writer. Just because she doesn't talk about reading doesn't mean she doesn't do it, but across her whole entire platform, she doesn't really ever talk about reading and she doesn't talk about who her inspirations are. And all of this has led me to wonder if this is a Dunning-Kruger effect thing. And she truly does genuinely think this book is really good. Like, I do believe that. I don't believe that she intentionally scammed people. I believe that she genuinely thinks this book is good. I just also believe that she's not correct about that. And that's the lesson she needs to learn, is that she might really love it, but that doesn't mean that it was ready for publishing.
At first, it was like, I can't tell what I did wrong because I felt like I had done everything right up to that point. I had hired editors. I had done everything that I could to my best ability because I am one person. I've never been at a mental low than I have this past week. People commenting things like, you're saying this is affecting your safety? To which my answer is, it was affecting my safety. It literally felt like I was being crushed by the world. I have never experienced heartbreak to that level. I have never experienced fear to that level. What do I do? Like, how do I respond to these people who are being, like, obviously aggressive? Because if I delete comments, people are gonna get mad at me. If I block people, people are gonna get mad at me. So how do I deal with
I don't know if you picked up on that, but I believe the implication of her saying it was affecting her safety is her saying that it was causing her to consider drastic self-harm. That, again, and I'd like to reiterate this, that is not the fault or responsibility of your readers. If that really is how you feel, then you need help. This would be such a hard thing to go through. Like, I can't even imagine being in a situation where you publish a book and then you get this much negative feedback. I don't doubt that that would be a very difficult thing to go through. Blaming the readers giving you the negative feedback for how that made you feel, I don't even know what to say. They just didn't like the book. You're not allowed to not like books anymore, because what if the author themselves, because you left a 1-star review, like, what is the point she's trying to make here? It might seem like I'm being heartless, but again, she's going to go back to talking about the video she saw in a second, and I wonder how much of this video is genuine, and if it is genuine, then it's still not fair to put that on your readers. If that is really the situation you're in, then you need professional help. And if that's not the situation you're in, then lying about that and putting it online is disgusting. But either way, that is not your reader's fault. And she went on to make a really interesting comment about people are going to get mad at me if I delete comments, right? In my experience, the general internet is very understanding if you delete genuinely very harassing comments. If you delete comments that are people just trying to share actual fair constructive criticism, that's when people get upset and frustrated. And especially when somebody's in the midst of some kind of scandal or is getting a lot of backlash, going through the comments and deleting comments from people who are trying to call that out is generally frowned upon. But pretty much any rational person will feel like it's okay to delete a comment if that comment is genuinely abhorrent. So was she out here deleting comments that weren't that bad and were just people delivering criticism, and then people got mad at her for deleting comments? I'm kind of reading through the lines on that. I don't know if that's true, but if she's saying if I delete comments, people will get mad at me, in my experience, people get mad when you delete comments that are fair criticism. If you're deleting comments that are people just actually being nasty and disgusting in your comments, the everyday person is very understanding about that and doesn't get mad about that.
Being harassed. I'm still unhealthy from this. I'm still living in fear. Barely eaten anything in the past 5 days because this does mean this much to me. The worst.
You guys know what I'm going to say, right? You know what I'm going to say. And I don't want to sound like, I can't even imagine, this would be a really hard thing to go through. And so I don't want to sound heartless and I don't want to sound flippant. I just hate it when people do this. She hit my 2 big pet peeves in this video. Actually, my 3 big pet peeves. My 3 pet peeves when it comes to creators, authors, and responding to backlash are people who cite mental health and the effect that it's had on them as an attempt to get people to stop criticizing them when the people are delivering fair criticism for the most part. Authors who blame negative reviews from specific content creators as to why the backlash took place and claim that nobody would have said that stuff about their book if that one person hadn't. And people who feel entitled to other people's money in order to have careers as an artist. Those are my 3 pet peeves. She hit all 3 of them in this video. So anyway.
The worst thing that I can be told is it's a scam. It's a market. It's a market tactic. And it's all just, she got you all. There's something that cannot be more painful than knowing that you did everything that you possibly could and still not being good enough.
Did you? You explained the map twice. You had 2 different explanations for where the map came from. So I don't mean to sound mean, but I don't feel like you did everything you could.
That sense of understanding, and it slipped away from my fingers in a matter of hours. I couldn't handle it. I don't even know how to express this. as to how much this impacted me. And I'm sure that I'll get comments on this video of like, you're too sensitive, you need to back away from your craft, and that's not what it's about for me. I can't. I have never been able to.
My sister in writing, my sister in publishing, people are probably saying that as a reaction to you talking about what potentially is a drastically detrimental mental state that you are in. Wording it as you're too sensitive is maybe a harsh way to do it. I'm torn on this because if people are saying she's too sensitive because of the 10,000 hours mastery video and the other very defensive video that she made, then I agree with them, and I think them saying you're too sensitive is a fair statement. If what has actually happened is that she shared the mental state that she's in as a result of this and people are saying you need to back away if that's the case, I genuinely, and I know I've said this so many times in this video, but I could not agree with that more. If this is actually the mental state you're in, you need to get off the internet and drive to the nearest hospital, potentially call somebody else to drive you there. If you actually haven't eaten in 5 days and have contemplated taking your own life, then you need professional help. And somebody saying to you, maybe back away then, if that's how you feel, I agree with that. And so I think it depends on what people are saying she was too sensitive in response to. I agree with either one. If they're saying she's too sensitive because of the Malcolm Gladwell video and the other defensive video she made, then I agree with that. But if people are saying, hey, you need to step away because if this is affecting your mental health that much, you need to step away and address that, I also agree with that. So I don't know in what context people are saying that, but I generally agree.
In my life, because I love this project and I love these people that I have hired as employees, but really these are people that I talk to every single day and bond with and have fun with these characters and these, you know, and building this much bigger project better than anything I ever could have imagined, where I felt seen and I felt heard, and there's people working on this with me, and that's all I've ever wanted for a very long time. And so also the terror of, am I going to lose this all? Especially when you are constantly getting comments that are like, it stops here, you're done, like you're not recovering from this. For a little bit I thought that was true.
Again, I don't doubt that she might have had the occasional person saying that, but the majority of what I've seen people are saying is that she absolutely could have the comeback of a century if she took the feedback and wrote a good book. She seems to have conflated not liking this book and thinking it might not have been ready for publishing with not being supportive of her. And again, I'll go back to what she said. She was the one who made the comment about people need to learn the difference between bullying and constructive criticism. I think she needs to learn the difference. And I think she needs to understand that people cannot like the book, and that doesn't mean they're not supportive of you. And again, I'm sure there are people out there being mean, but the majority of what I have seen are people who are really, really rooting for you. And just because they didn't like the book and they're saying they didn't like the book doesn't mean they aren't rooting for you, and doesn't mean they don't think you could make a comeback.
It felt like the world was crushing me and that there was absolutely nothing I could do, and it was the end of the line. And I couldn't see my life going back without this and without these things. I picked myself back up and I said, I'm doing everything that I fucking possibly can to pull out of this, because I love the story and I love what I've created. I love the inspiration that I have given to people. I'm gonna make it right. I think I have lived through the worst fear that I have had throughout my entire life. For like half my life, I've lived through it and I'm done. I've had this experience and now I can move on. Now I can get up and I can go back at it stronger, and I can rebrand and do all these things and go at it with as much passion as I possibly can. Literally created this like.
So that is a very healthy mindset to be approaching this revision and rebrand with. And that is actually something that my mom said to me once that has really stuck in my mind and that I think about a lot. One time I had a bad day and I was telling her it was like the worst day I've ever had. And she said, well, the good news is you never have to live today again. Sometimes when I have a really, really, really bad day, I remember that and I think, and you know what? Silver lining. I'm never going to live this day again. That was it. That was the one time I'm ever going to have to live this very day. And I think there is something very healthy about that approach to this, of she's had this bad experience. This potentially is the worst way an indie debut release could go. And she had it and she lived through it. And she's going to come back stronger for it. And so she can live through anything. Like, I do agree that that is a very healthy mindset. That kind of contradicts where this video started, though, and a lot of what she said, unless she's saying this was the mental journey she was on. But she's saying she still hasn't really, like, eaten and stuff, and it's still affecting her. So I don't know. I don't know exactly where she's at, but I'll maintain that her mental state is not the responsibility of the readers or anybody reacting to any of this. Her mental state is her responsibility and that of her support network. And this is something that she maybe needs to address if that is the case. But this thing that she's saying right now, I think is a really healthy mindset. Before I saw this video, that's kind of what my final point was going to be, is I don't think this is the end for you. I think if you make the revisions and you put out a better book, people are going to be forgiving and receptive. I do believe that. And I still believe that, honestly. Even given this response, I still believe that. I still believe that if she can learn the lesson she needs to learn, and if she makes the revisions and she puts out a new book, she can salvage all of this. If you write a good book, people will forgive that at one point in time you did not write a very good book. I think she can make a comeback even with this video.
Entire company and creative studio around this, like, as the start. So I said,
I got on a call with my team for close to 5 hours brainstorming ways to make this right. We decided on our core team devoting all our time to revising and strengthening. We decided to do a search from my page for a copy editor and proofer because we have so many experts in our community and I want to listen to my readers. We decided to release a new revised chapters on Patreon for free to regain trust from our audience and show them what we've got. I decided to take the risk and offer a $15 hardcover for second buyers and give everyone a free digital copy of the revised version. That is a net loss for me. We put up a pre-order for the second version because we are our own distributor as an independent team of creatives and discontinuing print on demand because I really don't want to support Amazon. I want to make it the best I can while still being able to financially support my team and myself. So I think this is in response to people saying that it's really suspicious that she already has pre-orders out for the next version, because people are like, dude, part of the allegations is that some people are saying that she pushed the pre-order so much because she knew the book probably wasn't going to be well received. Again, I do believe that she believed that it was going to be well received. Coming right back with another pre-order run for a revised version of the book when the first version has gotten this negative of feedback is a bold move, and people have called that out, and I think she's saying this stuff in response to that. Again, you're not entitled to even living yourself as a professional author, let alone having a team whose salaries you're paying. You're not entitled to that. And I understand that you're trying to explain where some of these decisions came from, but people are allowed to think that you're not making the right choices.
You know what? We're gonna go for it. We're all gonna start working on this, and we're already all building, like, the rest of the series together. Let's go back and do it again. Trying to do every single thing we can, right? And from this point on, I've also learned some personal lessons. I had responded to people and been like, no, I have editors. Like, I have hired these people. I have done these things. Why is this information being, like, spread about me? Or people who were going after very specific things that I had done intentionally in the book. And me going, well, this is what I meant with it. And the smallest things impacted everything. Everything. And so I've learned now that I can't go into my comment sections. It's not easy working the job that
I've already responded to some of the things that she's saying here because she said similar stuff earlier, where I told you guys that she's been very upset at people alleging that she didn't use editors. The book doesn't read like it was edited. If people feel that way, they're allowed to share that, and they're allowed to say that they're suspicious that that means it wasn't edited. That's not misinformation. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that as a creator you have to avoid your comment sections. I live in my comment section usually for the first few days after I post a video. You guys know I can be very responsive. It's not that you can't respond to people, but responding to criticism almost always looks defensive. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? In the end, is it worth it if this one random commenter said this thing and they think they have this gotcha on me and they think they really got me with that and I feel like they don't and I want to like respond sassy? What do you benefit from that? I feel torn because I do not believe that if somebody's being horrendous to you that you should just take that. And I'm in support of things creators have done in the past where they make a video responding to a really awful comment, just calling attention to the fact that somebody left it, especially if their full government name is behind the post, because it's like, dude, you commented this from your like public account. And so, hey, if anybody knows this guy, like, just so you know, your dad/brother/husband left this comment under one of my videos. Like, I'm somewhat in support of creators doing that. But again, it's such a tough line to walk as a creator, because if people's criticisms are fair and then you defend yourself against them, you're going to come across looking really defensive. If somebody's genuinely being abhorrent and you do something like that, then usually it's better received. That's why I think it's better to err on the side of caution. And if you're going to do something like that, make sure it is a truly awful comment that somebody's leaving, because if people are commenting criticisms and you comment responding to them and rebutting them, then you're going to look defensive.
I do, and I adore what I do. I could do it. I do it literally all day, all night. Like, I'm in my bed, like on my studio, I'm out there packing and shipping things. My animal, for God's sake.
So this, she said, and yes, I do have a psychiatric service dog. I was only able to afford her through crowdfunding in my state's disability program. Please stop using my service dog and drama about me. You are not going down a rabbit hole. You are finding every fact about my life and using it against me to keep getting views from my name. This is where she's referencing, like earlier in the video, she said she got doxxed. People found this account. I'm not going to say that much about it because essentially people found an account where she, under her real name, was crowdfunding to get a service animal. I wonder if we are towing a line. We don't know what else she's dealing with. We don't know what she wasn't comfortable sharing in that crowdfunding campaign. She could have needed the service dog for more reasons than the one that she shared. She could have something else that is part of why she needed the service dog, and we don't know. So I do think it's a dangerous territory, and I think there's enough to point to here that we don't have to look at this and take this into account to make an opinion on her in this whole situation, in my opinion. So I do think people should stop looking at this and address the criticisms towards her under the name that she is publishing under.
Like, both of them have like constellation colors. Like that is where we are at. Like, everything in my life revolves around this because it's my special interest and I'm neurodivergent. This has been my thing my entire life. This is my entire...
I was 14 here. I just sold a copy of my book to a stranger. This was the first book I finished and published, but unpublished less than a year later when I was 15 because I wanted to start on the traditional publishing path instead.
My entire branding as a human, with that passion and with the drive that I have to keep going, to not give up on this because I don't want to give up on my life.
Again, the wow. So again, saying if she doesn't make it as an author, that's the end of her life. That's not our responsibility. You do not have a God-given right to people's money for your books, or you're gonna die. This is the most insane. Do you see why I was so flabbergasted watching this? Like, the fact that she's saying literally the words that she said. Let's rewind.
My entire branding as a human, with that passion and with the drive that I have to keep going, to not give up on this because I don't want to give up on my life.
To not give up on this because I don't want to give up on my life. Again, the implication that if she does not make it as a successful author, that means her life's not going to continue. That is a sign of severe mental distress and a sign that I'm sorry if this is overstepping, need to be in a hospital. And I know I've said that a million times already, but I just cannot stress this enough. This is not the fault of your readers. And again, the implication here isn't please stop criticizing my book, Oral. You know, it's I have to have a career as an author, not only supporting myself full-time, but apparently a team of artists. I have to make enough money off of my books to pay myself and a team of artists' salaries, or else I am going to... And if you do anything to prevent me from reaching that, then it is your fault that You see what I'm saying? What an insane thing to film and post. I don't want something to happen to her. Should her family see this video, I hope that they're like, oh God, we gotta get to her right now. I hope her support network is treating what she is saying in this video with the gravity that it deserves, because if she is telling the truth, then she is not mentally well. But I cannot stress enough, and I will keep going back to this point, it is not the responsibility of your readers to keep you mentally well. And it's not the responsibility of your audience to support your mental health. It's not even that she's saying stop saying mean things about my book. She's saying I need to have a career as an author or my life is over. And you might be thinking I'm like reading into a lot of what she said here, but it's what she said throughout the duration of this video. The underscore of this whole entire video is I'm on the precipice of a mental breakdown because of this. And if you guys keep being mean to me, it might send me over. That is what the majority of, I mean, am I insane? Do you guys disagree with me? That's what I feel like the majority of this video is dedicated to. And I just think it's so manipulative and gross. It's either true and she desperately needs help, and I hope her support network steps in and helps her, or it's not true and this is abhorrent.
I've learned a very important lesson, and that's that it will happen no matter what. But I've been through it now. I've had the worst things that people have told me. I've had some really wonderful words that people have told me. It's just to give a little bit perspective of who I am as a person and what this genuinely means to me. And I hope this can shed some light on what it is truly like to be in this situation. Even though it's wonderful
For those of you who keep theorizing as to how I started a whole creative studio, no, I'm not an industry plant. No, I'm not a grifter. I took the money I made from pre-sales and put it back into what I love the most. A 6-figure business means 6 figures of revenue are going into it. I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars I'm holding on to. I have a team of international employees and contractors I'm paying, books I'm ordering, shipping supplies, and an office space. All I care about is to be able to keep doing this. You don't need all those artists to keep selling books, though. And also, I've already mentioned that I think it's fair for people to wonder about your financial situation because of how hard a cut you made between please donate to my Kickstarter, I desperately need you to donate to my Kickstarter or I can't have my dream career, to I have a 6-figure business and I'm this big bad entrepreneur. It was a really hard shift and I was confused too. And my brain jumped to family money. And then again, I kind of figured it out and I was like, okay, I figured out what was going on, but I get why people got confused about that because I got confused about that too.
Wonderful having all of this come in and all of this happen. I've also allocated all of it back into my company. Like, I pay a lot of my employees more than I do myself because this is, once again, what matters to me. I'm going to keep doing this as much as I can. As long as I can survive, I'm okay. I'll sacrifice everything that I need to in order to just give my stories to other people. People don't see the toll that takes on somebody, and the toll and the stress, and being an artist is a very strange thing in this day and age. Being both an artist and an influencer so I can be an artist. I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you if you made it this far. Thank you for kind words. Thank you for all of those that have supported me along the way and very encouraging things that I have heard. There are so many people, and seeing so many people waiting for me to get back up, that gave me hope. There's people out there that are recognizing like how much heartbreak this has caused and how much devastation in my life it has caused. But I would not be able to do it without the team that I have. Without the artists that I bond with, without the people that have stayed with me throughout all of this and been like, no, we're here for you. And that itself is a reason to fight. Fighting to give other artists a voice and to allow them to also live their dream and to give others hope. I want to continue doing that. And I'm going to. I would die before I gave up on this thing.
Everything that she said throughout this video, oh my God, where did this bug come from? What the hell? I've had the door and the window shut this whole time. I've been filming for 3.5 hours. Where did that bug come from? Okay, that was really weird. I would die before I gave up on this. It's just manipulative, you know? Maybe you guys aren't gonna agree with what I mean about her kind of saying this stuff about potential self-harm and things like that.
I hope that at least shines some light on like what this all has done to me and how one person, one video can impact someone, especially an artist and a creative. As authors, we should be doing better to support each other. We should be lifting each other up. We should be speaking up for each other in this time where AI is replacing a lot of our jobs and with artists, and we're not. We're becoming competitors because of this market that we have been forced into. These publishers that are quite literally, their companies, controlling how books are distributed, controlling every single thing about being an author. The way we fight it is not as indie authors bringing other indie authors down. It is lifting each other up. There's a lot of potential out there and a lot of authors and a lot of readers and a lot of people who have hope in this day and age. So speak up, act like an artist. You are allied. Authors are artists, and we have lost sense of that. We have diverged away from that into this is a job and an occupation in a market. So start becoming an artist again. Keep pushing, because even if something is your will to live and the worst thing happens to it, you can still get back up. I'm not dying yet. I'm not dead yet. And I am not going to give up on it either. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day. Welcome to the world of Guardian.
And therein lies the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. I was watching this earlier, and I really threw a lot of the manipulative language and things. Like, I was upset, and I was like, wow. And then some of the stuff she said that, like I said, it's like provably false, that the initial reaction was really positive. Like, from the jump, from people receiving this book, it seems as though people had criticisms, and this wasn't unique. Like, this isn't something that has just popped up or whatever. Sharing your mental health journey is one thing, and being honest with your audience about where your mental health journey is at is another thing. And it is yet a third thing to make your mental health the responsibility of your audience. So watching a lot of this video, I was thinking about that. She had brought up that video about the author, and when she first brought it up in her response, the first time I watched this, I thought that she meant that that was the first criticism that she had really seen, and that she thought, oh no, like people might not have liked this book very much, and then the other criticism rolled in and whatever. But then she comes back around and says, and this just goes to show you that one video from one author can lead to this whole thing. So if this video is to be believed, and if this is actually what she believes happened, then she is saying that all of this backlash is because one indie author didn't like it and made a video about that, and that set off some chain reaction that made everybody else feel negatively about it. It's not true that it got immediately positive reception. And it's not true that this backlash was caused by one single person. I don't even know who she's talking about. I have seen so many authors, so many editors, so many book creators. I've seen so many people talk about this. Most people have the position that she could come back stronger. In fact, I have yet to see one video where somebody said that wasn't true. Everybody's rooting for her. Everybody's giving constructive criticism. Yes, other authors are making videos about this, but they're making videos with their thoughts and feelings about what happened. And the implication that this author caused this entire wave of backlash towards you because they didn't like it. It's my peak pet peeve when it comes to authors. My very, very tippy top of the pet peeve is this whole, book criticism ruins the book community, and when a creator says something negative about a book, they are damaging me and they are damaging my sales. Now, she's saying this was another indie author, whatever video she's referencing. Again, I don't know which specific video she's referencing because there's been so many, but according to her, there's one negative video that came out, and that negative video was why everybody else had something negative to say. It bothers me when authors say that because since the dawn of literature, going back to like the invention of the printing press when literacy became common, there have been books and there have been book critics because books cost money. YouTube might be a new thing, and doing criticism in video format might be a new thing, but book criticism is not a new thing. And literacy as we know it has never existed in a time where there were not book critics. I hate it when authors say this. You do not have a God-given right to people's money. And people do research sometimes as to where they're going to spend their money because it's hard to make money. And books are expensive these days. This book cost me $17.99 of my hard-earned cash, and it's a write-off for me because this is a business. But still, it's like if somebody's going to spend that money to read a book, they want to know that they're going to enjoy it. And if they do research to find that out, they're entitled to that. And if part of that research is trusting creators online that give opinions on books, then that's valid. And if that creator doesn't like your book, as long as somebody is being honest about what their opinion on the book actually is, and they're sharing it in a constructive way, then they have not done anything wrong. And the implication that one person who gave you negative criticism online caused this whole entire backlash and did all of this to you, and everybody's just piggybacking off that person, it's asinine. It's idiotic. Like, I don't have another word for it. And if she actually believes that, then she's delusional. And if she doesn't, then it's like you're just throwing this allegation out there towards who knows who because you gave like no information, and maybe that was on purpose. But the implication that it was one video from one indie author / creator that gave this book a negative review that caused all of this is ridiculous to me. That's ridiculous. I read the book. I will stake my own reputation as a book analyst on this website on the fact that this book was not ready for publication. I'm being honest about that. I would have come to that conclusion regardless of if I had seen the backlash or not. In fact, if I had not been reading this book for the channel, I never would have read past the first chapter. I'm just being so for real. If I had picked this up for fun, I never would have made it past the first chapter. I only made it as far as I did because I was doing it for the video because of the backlash. I would have come to the conclusion myself that this book was not ready for publishing, regardless of hearing somebody else say that. And the implication that all of your readers and all of your reviewers and everybody who said all of this is only saying this stuff because they saw one person say it. I mean, I don't doubt that there are people out there who have not read the book themselves who have just seen other people say that about the book and are going with it. The criticism from the people who have read it is universally in agreement as to what the problems are. And even some of the positive reviews I have found are also acknowledging the same problems that the negative reviews are pointing out. But she's saying that all of this came from one author giving one negative review. If that's the case, why are you revising the book? If all of this was just in reaction to one person who, oh my God, has so much power over BookTok apparently, who said one bad thing and now everybody's mad at you, like, if that really is the case, then why bother revising it? And she went on to say, like, yeah, okay, I do think there are problems with it now. I see the improvements, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't have put the book out if I didn't think it was ready, all of that. So sad. I don't want anyone to think that I enjoyed doing this. I did not enjoy making this video. I do not enjoy being this negative on this channel. I do not say this to get sympathy for myself. I'm not saying this to be like, woe is me. I'm saying this to say it's not true that it got positive reviews. I mean, maybe literally the first 2 or 3 reviews she saw were positive. But she said in this video essentially that all the reviews were positive and there were a few people that had constructive criticism, and then this one random indie author on TikTok said they didn't like it, and now everybody's just saying they didn't like it. The book needs revision. It needs more revision than you can do in 3 or 4 months. You do not have a right to people's money to be an author. You do not have a right to people's money for you to run a creative studio full of artists. You have to provide them back a product that they want in order to have their money for you to be able to do that. And if you are not doing that, then they are entitled to not want to give you their money moving forward. And the only way to fix that is to provide them a product that they want to purchase. I'm flabbergasted. Like, I'm truly so sad. I want her to succeed. I still feel that way. I just think she needs a reality check. She needs to understand that, like, this is not the fault of one person who made one video. The book needs revision. And the implication that the backlash wouldn't have come if that one person hadn't made that one video is crazy. And also the implication that it was all positive until they did that is not true. If she does put another version of this book out in December, I will pick it up and I will tell you guys how I feel about it, but I'm not going to purchase the book until she's actually sending out copies, because I don't know if December is a realistic timeline to turn around a good revision. And so I hope actually that she ends up announcing that that timeline isn't realistic. And so I don't want to pre-order it now because I don't want to just have that in limbo. But as soon as she confirms that the books are indeed coming out in December and that she has them and they're printed and all of that, then I'll order one, I'll read it, I'll let you guys know what I think about it. And if she genuinely does fix all the problems, I'll tell you that. I got no bias here. I'm not rooting against her, genuinely. I'm pretty upset about this response. I don't think she's learned the lesson she needs to learn, but I do think she could fix this if she does learn the lesson she needs to learn. I just think she does need to learn that lesson for that to happen. Oh, I hope you guys don't think I was too harsh or mean. I just really, like, I'm bamboozled. Like, I just don't know how to feel. Okay, my memory card is literally out of storage, so that's gonna be it for me today, you guys. What do you think? How do you feel? Have you read this? Did you read it? What did you think of it if you did? If you haven't read it, how do you feel about this whole thing as well? Let me know in the comments down below. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!